Good morning. Welcome to your Wednesday cup of cyber. I don't know if we move that microphone out of the way. We'll just leave it. Whatever. We'll leave it there. Welcome to your Wednesday morning cup of cyber. I'm Jim with Cyber-Recon. As always, here with you, ready to take on the day. As you know, it's Wednesday. We've thrown on our Blackbeard pirate shirt.
Avast, ye scallywags!
And hoisted the Jolly Roger in the back. Obviously going to look at something attack worthy today because we're still going on with the Security Plus theme. We're going to look at a hash attack sequence called Pass the Hash that was really big for a while, and we still see it being used a lot in the wild already. It's used a lot against, it's used against Windows systems, right? That's what we exploit. We're exploiting Windows systems, which is about 90% of the environment out there anyways. So if we're in a corporate environment, we're trying to get, as the bad guy, we're trying to get those corporate secrets, then we can certainly use this type of attack to exploit that. Let me fix my background so I'm getting a little lighter out. So the other thing I was going to say this morning is we'll probably move the Cup of Cyber back up to 7 o'clock because it's just got a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot of noise going on. People are moving around a lot more. It's getting lighter earlier. We're getting a lot of, behind me back here, behind what's usually Cyber-Recon's fake server room, is some windows, and they're blocked off now by curtains and the green screen, but as you can see, as the day gets brighter, then it's harder and harder to mask that out, and if we open them up, it would just blind out the camera. So not good things. So we'll probably move the Cup of Cyber back to 7 a.m. East Coast time and talk to you then. We still are working on getting together the SANS Top 20 to NIST kind of a crosswalk program, so we'll have to do that fairly soon. This morning it's a little chilly out here in Virginia, so our cup of illy coffee is in a Missouri mug. So I don't know, what do you guys think? I don't, there's Denise or Denice. You gotta tell me how to say your name. I really need to know because you comment a lot. I would like to make sure I'm saying your name right. But is this format going okay for you? Are we doing the right, the right thing? Or is Security Plus what you need, and is it giving you the content you need to get ready to go take and pass the exam? Let me know. Let us know. We want to be there for you. So today in history, April 22nd, it is Administrative Professionals Day. Those admins, we used to call them secretaries back in the olden days, but we don't do that anymore. It's just one of the things that's changed over time. So say hi, thank the administrative professionals you work with. It is also one of those things when if you're doing social engineering, you are probably going to be talking to a lot of admins to get into where you want to get into. So admins are good there as well. Got a weird sound bar going across the bottom there. Just one of those strange days. So as always, I'm glad you're joining this part of the show. I will obviously cut and slice the second half off into its own little thing, but if you're here, if you like the cup of cyber content, kind of the part we talk about before we talk about our topic of the day, that's this part. That's where we talk about some things that can be seemingly nonsense, maybe. So I'll cut that weird part out. So if you want to interact, you got to be here for Cup of Cyber. Obviously, you can throw stuff in the comments below, and we'll talk about them. But what's going on with your security career? What's going on with your career? Are you able to get some training in while you're going through this pandemic thing, while you're locked up at home? Are you being able to get things done that you need to get done? And how can we help you? Anyways, after the intro, we'll be back. We'll jump into passing the hash. and walk through how that works. Kind of a long intro. We got to talk about a lot of stuff before we can talk about passing the hash. So this might be a little bit more lengthy this morning. So see you in just a minute here. All right. Jim with Cyber-Recon, and we're going to jump into looking at the pass the hash attack. So let's jump into the slide deck. This is part of your Security Plus preparation. If you're getting Security Plus, great. If you're just expanding your knowledge of the different types of attacks, that's good too. Or if you're just working on honing up your security chops, all good stuff. So if you're going for Security Plus, this is part of Domain 1, compare and contrast types of attacks, Subdomain 1-2 types of attacks, and this is the pass the hash attack. So we talk about pass the hash attack, we definitely have to talk about how hashing works and how this can be manipulated, right? So first we need to talk about, well, let's move me out of the way there. So first we need to talk about what a hash is. So a hash is a one-way mathematical function that creates a string of characters that represents that object. So the object itself can be a picture, a file, a password, really anything, but we're going to try and come up with a mathematical calculation that's going to be a string of characters that's going to represent that object. And the way that the math works, it can't be reversed. If it works good, it can't be reversed to find out the original thing. So if we hash a password, there should be no way to unhash that to come back up to the password. So we shouldn't be able to reverse a good hashing function, right? The hash is not an encrypted version of the object. It's just a representation of the object. And it's making sure that if anything in that object changes, the hash will no longer be valid. So that the hash is a true representation of that object, and it can't be reversed. We can't figure it out, right? The other thing we want to make sure is that two hashes of two different objects shouldn't be the same, right? So when we hash two different things, like two different passwords, it should never ever result in the same hash being created, right? And that happened with MD5. MD5, we could, in some cases, hash two different things, and it would end up with the same hash value, and that's called a collision. So again, a term you need to know, when a hash value is created, and they call that the message digest, right? The hash value is really called the message digest. When two message digests representing two different objects end up with the same hash, that's a bad thing. We never want that. And this pass the hash vulnerability has really been fixed in Windows 10, so it really doesn't exist so much anymore. The problem is there's a lot of systems out there that are not upgraded to Windows 10 yet. So in Windows, especially Windows workstations before Windows 10, and I'm going to stop saying that. Just in Windows, the password hash is stored in a service called lsas.exe. And it's stored in memory. An application is called the Local Security Authentication Server, and I think service is the last S. It stores the NTLM hash of the user's password. So it doesn't store the password in memory, but it stores that representation of the password in memory. So in this case, Alice uses the very, very secure password of Alice, and then NTLM hash of Alice is represented on the slide right here. So if you look there, that is Alice hashed using the NTLM hash, right? So, and this is stored in memory. So Alice, the username, her username in this case, very, very secure because her username is Alice and her password is Alice. Very bad security practices, of course. So this is stored in memory. So when we look at it, we look at the way that this single sign-on request to objects. And that's really why we have LSAS, is so we can log onto our computer one time, and then we can access different objects across our network, right? So if you log onto a machine, your logon hash and username are kept in lsas.exe in this program, right? It's stored there. It's stored in memory. So when you log on, as long as that computer has been rebooted, whoever has logged onto that, their credentials will be stored in this program. You have to be a local administrator to be able to see this program, but a lot of times we assign people local administrator rights to make things easier. That's one of the downfalls of this environment. A lot of times we have this conflict between ease and security. So this is one of the times ease is going to get us in trouble, right? So if we allow too many people to be local administrators, so administrators on their local machine, not administrators on the domain, just administrators on their local machine, if that system is compromised, then we can have access to this whole list of hashes that's included in this program. So you can see here, Alice, Bob, and Dan have all logged into the system. Their NTLM password hashes are all stored in LSAS, and their usernames are all stored in LSAS. So normally, the way this is going to work, Alice is going to say, hey, I need to get some files, right? So she's going to connect to a file server. She's going to send a request over asking to get connected to the file server and to use that resource. I'm going to move myself to the other side here. And what's going to happen is that server, that file server, is part of Active Directory, right? So it's going to send a challenge back. And the challenge is going to be a random 16-byte number that file server remembers, right? So it's gonna know what the number it sent over is. So now it's got Alice's username and it's got this 16-byte number. So the response is going to come back from Alice to the file server to get her access. And what she's going to do is she's going to send a response, and the response is going to be that same challenge that was sent by the file server, but now it's going to be encrypted with her password hash. Not her password, but her password hash. So that's going to be a response goes back. Now the file server has her username, the challenge that was initially sent, and then the response, which is that challenge, encrypted with the hash of Alice's password, right? That's, crazy stuff going on here. So, sorry about that. So now the file server is going to connect to Active Directory, because Active Directory is where we're going to validate that Alice has permission to use the service, has permission to access these files, and figure out all of her permission levels. So first, the file server will send the username, the NTLM hash, plus the challenge, and that's the NTLM hash of the challenge and the password. So that's really the hash that was sent back from Alice. I want to make sure that's clear. It's not her NTLM password hash. It's her username and that response to the challenge. So the NTLM hash of the challenge plus the challenge itself. So I want to make sure you don't get confused there. It's not the hash of her password, because that file server has no idea what the hash of her password is. That's the way this is designed. So it's just the NTLM hash, which is the hash of the challenge using Alice's password hash from her computer. So the response essentially from her computer. So Active Directory also has a copy of all of the users within the domain, their username, and their NTLM password hash. So the domain server can go through the same process. It can take the challenge and it can encrypt it with the hash of Alice's password and should come up with the same response. And that's why the file server sent that response that was received from Alice to the domain controller. If the domain controller looks at those and they all match up, then this domain server will say it's okay, Alice can access those files. So what we've done is initially we sent from the file server to Alice a challenge after she requested access. She encrypted that challenge with her NTLM password hash and sent it back to the file server. The file server sent that response, the challenge, and the username to Active Directory. Active Directory validated that it was all good to go, and then Alice got access to the file server. So in the attack, we can exploit this this setup if we do things right. So Hank the hacker's here, hacks Alice's computer, and that's the first step. We have to get some way to get that local admin, right? So computer becomes compromised. Hank is able to get the NTLM hashes from Alice's computer. That's the first step. And really, we don't want Alice's hash. We want Dan's hash, because Dan is a domain admin. And a domain admin has a whole lot more power. But we can't get directly to Dan to get his hash from his server, because maybe he's really secure. But he's had to log on to Alice's computer, and Alice maybe is not so secure. And her on her computer in LSAS is Dan's password hash. So Alice is the local admin, Dan is the domain administrator, and Hank is going to steal Dan's domain hash from Alice's computer. All Hank has to do now is use a tool that will allow him to pass that hash off as if he's Dan. All he has to do is pass that off as if he's Dan. So he'll send a request to create a domain administrator account. The domain admin, the domain server, domain controller, will send back that challenge. And Hank here is acting as Dan, right? So he's going to send over a request saying, hey, I'm Dan, create this new admin account. The domain controller will send back a challenge. Hank, acting as Dan, will encrypt that challenge using the password hash of Dan's password that he just stole from Alice. And then the domain controller will create the account. Normally we've got logging and stuff going on, so this may get noticed really quick. But maybe we can do something like elevate our account we've already got to a domain admin. And then it becomes game over. Now Hank has domain level privileges on this network. So that's the way this thing works. That's why this is so dangerous. Pass the hash I'm glad they've fixed it on most Windows systems, but remember, a lot of the legacy systems are out there in the environment. So when you find those older Windows 7 and Windows 8 boxes, they're still exploitable by this thing, and server like 2012 as well. So that's a rundown of Pass the Hash. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified. I'd love to hear what you think about Pass the Hash. Did this make sense? Do you understand it? If not, do we need to expand a little more? Let me know in the comments below. But as always, I'm Jim with Cyber-Recon. Be safe out there.